Oh, are you kidding? You're kidding? It's working? No, it's working. Oh wow, it's working. Oh, wow. So you have to put that in before it would. Oh my goodness gracious me. A couple of years ago, quite a few years ago, when I was living down in Mount Burr, and that Republican black guy from the United States, Secretary of State, drove by, I decided to publish a small book about Emmett-Till, who I knew very little about, but who had been murdered by some white supremacists and hung dead. And I think he was only 14 years old. And if you want to know about the black guy who was the Secretary of State of the USA, they got him because the first thing I did after returning from Northern Hemisphere was write to JFK's the only living person from that administration, named Arthur Goldberg, who was the Secretary of State of the United States government. And Arthur, over the years, being apart from, very central character, was also quite creative. And he did thank me, and I've read your letter, and goodbye, and I wish you luck, and so on. But Emmett-Till. So what happened was Rupert Murdoch arranged for the black guy who is the US Secretary of State to come here and drive Senator Birmingham's red car from otherwise. And so my thought was, well, I'm sick of drinking Coolabah wine, because it says the white supremacist Dave, his parents lived on Coolabah Street. Sick of drinking that. I think I'll publish a book about Emmett-Till. And I created it. It was very small, about the size of a pack of cigarettes or 2 packs of cigarettes. And I didn't even have time to legally deposit it in the library. Because immediately white supremacists, it wasn't about gays, you see. It wasn't about gays or Asians or heroin dealers. It was about a civil rights matter, a racial matter. White supremacists immediately stole all copies. And so I didn't even have time to legally deposited with the library. And I won't say what they did after that, but this thing didn't work the other day, so I had to put the video card in, and while I was doing that, this little thing dropped off. It's a little thing, don't know what it is, but if you want to talk about truth, the thing is that Asians are white supremacists. I've noticed that Asians are white supremacists too. And so the conclusion I've got today is that I would ban the Labor Party in Australia. And I'd also ban the Labor Party in Britain. because if you didn't notice that their campaign involved the IRA trying to kill, the Queen's cousin, Maggie Thatcher. That was their campaign, their political campaign was terrorism in the UK and elsewhere. In Australia, the Labor Party is the same. Their campaign involves terrorism against individuals who don't support them. They're white supremacists, the original white supremacists in Australia. So anyway, Emmet-till. Yeah, right. Oh, well, I'll just tell you a bit of the story, because I think it was a Playboy publisher, Hugh Hefner. Now, he was in the army and he got an idea. Oh, before I go on to that, Timothy Leary, the famous Harvard academic, he went to Italy, and within a week, his wife had been found dead. And the idea was suicide, but I now realize she was murdered by the Italian mafia. You get the picture? Murdered by the Italian mafia. And the mafia, the way they work it, for example, is, well, I won't say. But when I was at university first year, apart from just what drugs the students were taking and what was their sexuality and so on, I'll have to stop for a moment because there's a guy playing drums upstairs, and the guy playing the drums upstairs is a member of the mafia and has been since I moved in. The flat across the hall, number 4, I met a guy whose girlfriend was named Beverly, and he had a border, but the newspaper, when I visited them, said that, that's the police commissioner's address. So what the state government did is help him obtain ownership of the apartment, the flat, number 4, across the hall. And I eventually moved, and he also owns a place around the corner there, in the laneway there. But they used number 4 for a number of white supremacist type organizations. And the white supremacists also did drugs, and they had customers everywhere. And then, of course, the Scientology white supremacist drug dealers moved in too. But that guy, number 4, his girlfriend's name was Beverly. And I saw him the other day, and he's now got a daughter, it would appear, who's absolutely so thin, it's unbelievable. And Beverly wasn't with him, so we don't know what happened to her. Okay, so what was I saying? What's his name? That black guy who was the Secretary of State. The thing about Arthur Goldberg was that he died in 1990. And by then, Rupert Murdoch had found out everyone I'd ever written a letter to, every manuscript I'd ever written, and he had his people in the Republican Party, and I've got nothing against the Republican Party, except for the IRA, because as I said just before, in Britain, the Labour Party campaign involved trying to kill Maggie Thatcher, saying it was the IRA. Here, for example, there's the niece of the education minister, who by 74 was working with a guy in the IRA. Now, she became the student union president, and oh man, the things the government did so far as murders went were just enormous. So I'd ban the Labour Party. You can't have a government, a party, which doesn't believe in anything more than killing people, killing locals, killing people. You know, they if you ever listen to them or watch them, you find they have no policy they ever speak of. You know, it's always about, oh, well, this happened last week, or this is going to happen next week, but they have no policy. They're terrorists. They were terrorists from the start. White Australia policy was created by what is called the Labour Party. So I can't think of anything else to say. Yeah, but about John Lennon, okay, about John Lennon. Oh boy, talk about I'd ban the Labour Party. The thing about what's his name, that Playboy guy, that Hugh Hefner. I was thinking about this last night again. You know, they had the picture of the Queen Elizabeth II in the smokehouse with a side of beef, and she was dressing the side of beef, and so the name Hefner, although he might be German, comes from heifer, a side of beef. And so what they did, Hefner, is I sent him a little story I'd written. And the first thing he did is find some girls to marry, young women who were, you know, quite fecund, who could get pregnant quickly. And I think he had 2 kids or 3 kids from 2 new wives who were young women. They weren't necessarily blonde women or anything. And then what happened? But the breakthrough, the big news story, the big news story was they had the first negress, as the Playboy centerfold. And by now, Playboy was, you know, really pornographic, with full pictures of women with their underpants off, and nothing like, you know, what my mother used to wear, which was a bikini, but, you know, all their clothes off. And that caused such a stir that Prince Harry got insanely jealous and said, I can do that same thing, and married a negress. So they follow that, you know, they follow those kind of ideas because these people are stupid. Anyway, that's about all I got to say. But they did take the Emmet-till book. You know, Asians here are some of the rough as guts people imaginable. You know, really rough as guts. Like World War II, for example, was started by Asians. friends who had seen a plaque dedicated to Lady Good. And so they used the date of the opening of the setting of the stone as how to start World War II. Because in those days it was just like a game, just something that they've been doing for thousands and thousands of years. You know, and people who think, or academics, people who think play no role in any of it. Anything new that I can think of? Oh, let's see. There's a guy called L. Ron Hubbard. He's a white supremacist. A really dyed in the wool white supremacist. And his teaching is to be anti-academic, anti-scientific, that sort of thing. And my only experience with his local followers is heroin dealers, killers, murderers, and that sort of thing. They don't have a confessional, you see. They can't confess to their crimes. So they followed the historical process where evil always won the day. Like, for example, Britain, they had big fights between various nobility, and whoever was able to kill the opposition became the next royal. The Spencers were slightly different, but the terrorists found out about Spencer Gulf here, and so the Bush Republican administration said, "Oh, let's have a war in the Gulf, and we'll kill her too," because they don't know how to think. You know, there's nothing scientific involved in anything they do. Even medicine really isn't scientific. Okay. But I will tell you, give you some advice. If you want to know something about organized crime, see, in 72, I sort of did just 2 months of study into what we'll call organized crime and what they were doing at 4 different universities. If you want to know about organized crime, learn to do transcendental meditation, TM. What you'll find is that organized crime will then move in on you to the extent that they will control everything that you physically do. The only thing that will be free to you is your mind or your consciousness. And so just within a couple of weeks of doing TM, they control the media, for example. Some guy had posters of Lord of the Rings. He had friends in the media. They got some guy in Australia to do Lord of the Rings, multi-billion-dollar movies. You know, and that's Scientology, organized crime. The thing about what was I saying? The thing about the mafia, for example, in Australia, the big one, they invented white supremacism. That was the Labor Party policy from the start. and so they couldn't really undo it. And so they targeted gays and lesbians, and now there's a lesbian from Asia named Penny, is the Secretary of State of the United States government, and she's just there because one of their South African Labour Party supporters was from South Africa and didn't have a father. Okay, you know, one of those broken marriages, and his mother's name was Penny. And so the entire Labour government is devoted to doing those kind of crimes. I did watch, after the guy from Black Sabbath died, Ozzy Osbourne, I did listen to somebody on the internet was really good, and they gave me all his albums and all his albums. And every LP he did the same song over 20, 30 years. But one song was, now I forgot what I was going to say. But one song he was saying was about TV crimes, where the TV stations arranged to do the crimes. His name wasn't Ozzy Osbourne. There was a TV show long ago called Ozzy and Harriet, as I had a friend named Jackie Harriet. And so the TV people will turn it into a TV show, white supremacism. And so Ozzy Osbourne, he came along, a local mafia guy, Alex Innocenti. I think he got sort of like pissed off that the Beatles were able to do songs about people here that resulted in someone murdering either the person in the song or a relative or a parent. I think maybe he got pissed off with that. And so what he did is they wanted to introduce us to Scientology. I mean, to what's it called? Theosophy. And Theosophy then was one room, smaller than this room, selling the Virgin Madame Blavatsky books. She was a woman who got married but didn't consummate the marriage. The husband was an army man, person in the army, quite high ranking. And so somebody told Alex Innocenti that's what they did. And he followed through with the band called Black Sabbath because they got their first big number, their first hit from knowing that guy, that kid, whose mother ran the Theosophical Society bookshop, knew about his characterization regarding Lucifer. And her belief was that Lucifer is the same as someone else who supposedly was a radical revolutionary. And so Alex Innocenti got the band called Black Sabbath to form, and they used the name of the local diesel or coal-fired power station at Osborne as his name. And used the street address of one of the people who the Beatles' songs resulted in a murder as where the big concert would be held. It's typical. Throughout the years, people have followed Alex Innocenti. He has a website where he celebrates things like Janis Joplin, who, died, and Jim Morrison, who died. And they got Jim Morrison from a small shop on Unley Road called Morrison. It was Morrison Court. And they'd have a shop there and put in various things. At one stage, it was nothing but lights. But Alex Innocenti used the day he was interested, memorialised, let's say, Jim Morrison. And who else? Quite a few others who died. Most of them had died. And it looks like he supported them because they weren't mainstream or anything like that. I won't go into it further, but the thing about the movie I watched today was about, it's called In the Heat of the Night. And one of the characters was named Harold Holt. And he was targeted for murder. And so one day at the beach, disappeared, was killed. Probably, my mother said, it was probably a midget submarine came, picked him up, took him away. She had some interesting stories about Nazis, for example, who'd go to Switzerland to get plastic surgery to change their appearance, then move to Australia, sort of thing. Anyway, I'm not concerned with any of that. Not concerned with any of that. I did meet absolute #1 Communist Party people here in Adelaide. They moved in 1973. Labor Party rebuilt the entire city to give them somewhere to work. You know what I mean? I certainly hope you don't. There's nothing you can gain from this talk. I ban the Labor Party outright. Who needs a political party that is at war with the civilian population? And when they get into government, they're at war with the civilian population here in Adelaide, Australia, everywhere. Anyway, I'll smoke a cigarette and not say anything for a while. But I can tell you one funny thing. I did give a copy of something I wrote and published to an old professor named Jack Barbalet. And if you look the name up, it's sort of Spanish and also something else. And he was crazy enough to come 600 miles, 500 miles from Melbourne to Adelaide and sort of meet me at the brand new Woolworth supermarket. In Walkerville. Now, as I said, if you want to learn about organized crime, join Maharishi Mahesh Yogi TM movement. They will come out of the woodwork to give you an idea of how very, very organized they are. Oh, so Jack showed up at the Woolworths, the brand new Woolworths supermarket, and the only thing that I thought of at the Woolworths supermarket when I used to go there is a guy named Sam Powery became a speech therapist, a trained speech therapist. That's university level. And his speciality was to help people who had been in car crashes, had various illnesses, or born with a defective ability to speak. And so he had an associate with an office at the new supermarkets. Sam was quite a helpful person, but you're not allowed to have friends in South Australia. It's against the Labor Party policy. It's against their laws. Everybody must be a robot in the slot to do something like that. So Jack showed up at the brand new Walkerville Woolworths, and I took note of things. And so the next time I went there, the speech therapist had moved. This had moved, that had gone, blah, blah, blah. And then the mafia moved in. And then the mafia moved in. Italian mafia. Oh boy. The thing about Jack, though, according to his curriculum vitae, is he'd been to communist China 3 or 4 times. The same thing was true with, say, Jim Cotton, Professor Jim Cotton. The only place they can get employment these days is in China. You know, they can't possibly get employment in America because things have changed in America, and they're no longer 1,000% white supremacists or Protestants, for that matter, either, or communists, for that matter, either. So what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So Jack showed up. It was interesting, I suppose. Yeah, I'd never thought about it like that in terms of this isn't infant school, this isn't primary school, this isn't high school. You know, these are people who are in it for the money, you know, for the conspiracy. And so, as I said, the speech therapist, that closed down straight away. And the Chinese Communist Party came and harassed me 5 or 6 times. And that would be how Jack Barbalet, Professor Jack Barbalet, would have gotten, you know, forced to work in China because the Chinese never do anything off their own bat. And the reason for that is the British. And the British introduced opium to the Chinese and made millions and millions and millions of Chinese opium addicts. And so in that way, they could pacify the population, move in, I don't know, make money otherwise, take over that whole part of the world, including Japan and Asia. You know, and you know, what do they want to do? Make South Africa the white supremacist nation of the Africans. So it was interesting when the Chinese Communist Party people met me here. They'd meet me on the street. They'd show up at shops where I was going to, various other things. There's nothing good that can come from China now because, you know, they were enslaved by the British. Opium trade for 150 years, millions and millions and millions of people enslaved to opium. I can tell you a little bit of a story though. Once upon a time, somebody came into the parents' backyard and placed a shiny red device in the backyard. I had painted the word grow in yellow spray paint on the fence, but somebody had come in and then they'll beep their horn. I can tell you that Indian gurus aren't worth their salt. The Indian system has got to be one of the most worst system in the planet. You know, 60% of the Indian population for thousands of years have lived in poverty, abject poverty. And they see that as a good, ordered society. You never hear about the Maharajas or any of those characters. All you hear about is, and so anyway, so I'd reject Indian philosophy and teachings outright. But as I said, if you want to learn about organized crime, just join Transcendental Meditation. They'll come out of the woodwork for you. You know, they don't believe in, you know, academia. They don't believe in thinking. These are people who believe that actions speak louder than words, and there are no prayers for peace with these people. So you do TM, they'll come out of the woodwork. But they placed a small red enamel device in the backyard. And what was it? I didn't put it there, neither did the parents, neither did anyone else. That's the sort of people they are. The movie I watched today was interesting, In the Heat of the Night, about a school teacher who had a hobby where he grew orchids. You know, and if you've ever been to a high school, people talk about their teachers, like they use Danielson, the Trump, New Jersey Mafia people. They used Mr. Danielson because the first week he was here, he had this fresh out of teachers' college, had the unenviable task of telling Eleanor that her father had been found dead at the bottom of a cliff because the Beatles did a song about her as Eleanor Rigby, because the book we studied was by Rigby school books. You know what I mean? And so the New Jersey Mafia, with Donald Trump now as their man, utilized that with a prostitute named Daniels. The same thing happened at university when I bumped into Eleanor. Labor Party immediately went insane, you know, just because he bumped into somebody he knows who's a victim of us. I'll tell you something about the heroin people, how they work it with the police, state police. Apparently what happened was that there was a new law professor at the university Now, the law school had been completely rebuilt. It was all brand new. Oh boy, yeah, all brand new. And the new professor had a problem where he was accidentally murdered by state police. So the heroin dealers, 2-3 years later, to show how closely they worked with state police, would talk about one of their financiers of the heroin trade as the professor. But the professor, the actual professor, had been murdered by state police. You get the picture? Heroin dealers are the most, they feel that they've, Tim Leary explained this to me, sort of. His wife was murdered in Italy within the first week that they were there. And you'll never have Italian police investigating any crimes. They are pretty good. They call them the paparazzi. I believe the Italian police are called the paparazzi, which in the Western world is the media, or something like that. What was that? That was funny. I can't remember what I was thinking, but that was funny. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, Tim Leary, that's right. Tim Leary this wasn't widely talked about or distributed. It was, you might say, it's confidential. I mean, he talks about all these, the drugs there. What the reason people enjoy heroin or like it and sell it and pass it along is the idea is to get as close to death experience as is humanly possible. So they developed an idea of philosophy in the States where a psychological thing about near-death experiences. And the people who use it and sell it, they believe they're selling a near-death experience. And it gives them a consciousness of what, of what? Death, I'm death personified, said that Indian character when they drop those atom bombs. Oh, look, I tell you, anyway. God, it's bad. So I'd ban the Labor Party first thing. The first thing I'd do. It's a pity Tim Leary died. I remember when he was dying, some Italian mafia had moved into the house next door. Arthur Goldberg, you might say he was protecting me. He died in 1990. And then the mafia moved into the house next door, number 37. And man, did they play games. Tim Leary. Tim Leary, that was confidential about heroin, why people get hooked on it, why people sell it, why they enjoy it, near-death experience. The idea being that if you are careful with the dose, you can think you just died. If you use a little bit more, you will die. So with Playboy, for example, you find the mafia killed Marilyn Monroe. She took some sleeping pills, went to sleep. They entered the place at night, shoved some more sleeping pills down her throat, which gave her an overdose and she died. The mafia is busy here right now too. Jane Mansfield, for example, Playboy publisher Hugh Hefner didn't go out looking for women to take their clothes off. The way it sort of worked was people would approach him and say, apart from Marilyn Monroe, people would approach him and say, we'd like this woman to be in this show, in your magazine, and let's put her there. So what they did is they put Mansfield Street in Hyde Park. They found this woman, 3 children or something, named Jane Mansfield. She was a centerfold, Playboy, and then within a month, a single car accident, she was killed. No other cars involved. No culprits were found. Killed, murdered. And the mafia has waited 40 years, 30 years, and have moved into where Mansfield Street is and done up the whole area. And the people behind it are, I won't say, but they're into pawnbroking, loan sharks, people who invest, money so other people can rip people off. Goodbye, so long. It's terrible, that's what communism is all about. For example, for example, what was I saying? Tim Leary, yeah. He ran for governor of California against, what was the guy's name, that film actor, Ronald Reagan, whose nickname was Dutch. And so where the Maharishi people opened up their world government was in Holland, who speak Dutch. And Tim Leary ran against Ronald Reagan. And of course, he didn't win or anything, because winning isn't why, winning isn't what the game is really about. But he didn't win, and I think Ron Reagan or somebody else won the election that time and went on to become the governor, then the president, and everything else. And his poor wife got dementia, or was that Bob Hawke's wife? No, he got dementia, and his poor wife would have to stand next to him. And when asked a question by the paparazzi, the Italian mafia, he wouldn't know what to say. So she would, out the corner of her mouth, tell him what to say, how to answer the paparazzi's questions. And Tim Leary, Tim Leary, he had a problem later on because he got prostate cancer. And I remember it also clearly. The mafia had moved in next door. Arthur Goldberg had passed away in 1980. They had already, 6 years earlier, taken Arthur Goldberg's nice letter to me from my place. And then 6 years later, moved the mafia into the house next door. And so Tim Leary died when the mafia, Italian mafia, like the Italian mafia who killed his wife in Italy, moved in next door. So, there's nothing you can say about it apart from Tim Leary was saying having a drink of beer with his old friend who was one of the wealthiest families in America, saying, oh, I've probably had the most interesting life that anybody could possibly have. And soon after he passed away, he did have some children or something and a couple of daughters who survived. And they were all saying, oh, he's crazy. Tim Leary is crazy. I mean, he's mad. That guy's crazy. He's always stoned. But the thing about the Bob Dylan song, everybody must get stoned, that's about tombstones. So you're talking about Shakespeare there, grave robbers. You know, they go to a cemetery and they look at the tombstone name and then find somebody in show business or politics with the same name. So everybody got stoned. And what happened was that the German Nazi Party, who apparently were headquartered here in Adelaide, they removed some of their tombstones and the bodies. They dug up the graves like Shakespeare, you know, grave robbers, and removed the bodies. So that the evidence to say that the Nazi Party worked out of Adelaide, South Australia, is no longer there. John Lennon sort of tried to point out a similar thing in his 1966 book, where he tried to turn it into a joke. But the Nazi Party, they don't understand what humor is about or jokes. Like, for example, Freud would say, look, it's all about sex, and anything you do that's not about sex is madness, insanity. It's the opposite of being human. So they got rid of him, you know, and then you got the Labor Party talking about people as if we're just robots, you know. So anyway, I think Tim Leary passed away when the mafia was in the house next door. I could go on about it and say, well, they did this and they did that and all this rubbish and all that rubbish. But there's no point, because I've got a copy of Tim Leary's book called Flashbacks. And I bought it because I remember there was Flash Gelato in North Adelaide near where I lived. And what they did to the whole place, there was a huge warehouse there called Le Cornu, and they completely demolished it. Terry Winterford, her father or her adopted father, he was the CEO of Le Cornu. So the mafia demolished it, left the field empty for 5, 10, 15 years, and demolished other places that good people, legitimate business people, had something to do with, and replaced it with the mafia. So I bought Flashbacks and thought, oh yeah, I remember Flash Gelato, and it had been deliberately misprinted. It had been deliberately misprinted so that so it was unreadable. And it cost $30 too. It's interesting. It's a sad case. I think I bought that there after he died, by the book, and so on. The mafia moved in. The mafia everywhere. Okay. As for the Vatican, I've got to point something out. I suppose I should point something out. When the mafia reared their ugly head, I became aware of it when a victim of Yoko Ono and American TV bumped into me at Walkerville to say, "Oh, my father, Bill, died the other day." Mm-hmm. And what was that about? Oh, I can't remember. I just thought, well, that's typical, typical. Died. She probably, stalked me to Walkerville or worked somewhere there or had been recruited by the Communist Party. And so, various things happened. But I asked her some questions like, you still got that astrological charm for the protection from the malefic influence of planets? Malefic influence of planets? And she said, yeah, sure, yeah, I got that. But let me tell you something. You know that Vatican letter? That went missing years ago. And I just thought, oh, that's the IRA investigated and took the Vatican letter. And then, tried to kill everybody they could. The IRA, the Labor Party, the IRA. And they were working with that person I mentioned, whose uncle was the Labor Party education minister. The IRA. These aren't people who are into sex. They're into violence, accomplishment, achieve things, defeat, divide and conquer. They don't know anything about sex. It's about sticking your spear into the woman's private parts. Or I was born from the fifth rib on Fifth Avenue where the Labor Party left their credit card. The Labor Party is despicable, is insidious. They're the Antichrist. And I'll mention that because back in the 50s when TV first started, there was a man on TV, he'd pay to be on TV, saying that the Labor Party is evil. Evil. The Antichrist. I forget his name, but he wasn't on TV very long. Okay, so what was that all about? Oh, the Vatican letter. I said, well, goodbye, I hope you have fun. And then we found out that the people involved in this whole plot, Murder Incorporated. They even took over my doctor's office, Jill Dickinson, made her Joe Biden's wife, Jill or whatever it was, drove her out of town. She had to move up to Manson Street in the hills to get away from them. These guys are insane. They are, insane. I did read a book at the university called The Insane Society for economics, I think it was, economics 2, where they're saying they create a society where they have an internal, quote-unquote, logic that if you step away from it or see it from outside is no rationality or logic at all. They're insane. And so that's why I dropped out of that course, because I just can't handle the idea of living in an insane society, which was why I left the country, if you follow that. had a good job. It was interesting. I've been employed. Yoko uses that as well. She did that as well. They assume your identity. They assume your identity. Unbelievable. Yeah. I was on the 7th floor of the A&P building on the corner. What they had is the Queen and all her entourage wandering around the street down there opposite. She wasn't allowed into the Parliament. Wasn't allowed into the state Parliament, which at the time was run by a world-famous homosexual named Don Dunstan. And so what happened was that the heroin dealers found out where I worked, found out where I lived. I had some friends who lived in Norwood. I visited them. I had a family and children. And so some of the heroin Scientology, heroin dealers, clients that moved in opposite where they lived, opened up little shops. I mean, let's face it, if there's no employment and there's nothing for you to do, playing around with these ideas of economy ain't going to improve anything. It'll just make it worse. So the thing was, let's talk about something. Oh, I was saying, yeah, but the characters in the Vatican, the popes, for example, I think it was 77, the first non-Italian pontiff, pope, for 1,000 years, 1,500 years. Apparently the Italian, the Roman Empire, founded Britain like 200 years before Christ. They founded Britain. They had, well, not plumbing, they had waterways in a place called Bath. So your guess and my guess as to the truth or the veracity of those kind of biblical stories is up to question. But when 1977, a first non-Italian pope, that's because I was living in the place built by the people who killed John Kennedy, 1963. Built by them. Get the picture? And they sure as hell weren't Catholics. They were part of organized crime, Italian organized crime at that. So let's see what happened. Oh boy, what happened? What happened? Oh, and then the Germans wanted to take over. They sort of got rid of those characters, and the Germans wanted to take over. And now there's an American who's the Pope, but he didn't live in America at all. He left the country. It was so bad. It was so bad in the USA that he left the country. You know, went somewhere else to live. Oh, this is an hour. And then I did write to the new Pope, the American man, sort of explaining, you know, what they're up to. And so they arranged for the Australian Labor Party Prime Minister to go meet the Pope. You see, that's the level the Labor Party works at. You know, anything true, anything real has to be erased and converted into the party. You know what I mean? Talk about pathetic. As for Germany and the paparazzi, when the mafia moved into the house next door, what happened? Arthur Goldberg had passed away, and Tim Leary had also passed away. So I spent a year writing a diary. And when I'd finished it, the mafia came in, took the diary, and made headlines internationally from Germany in a magazine called Stern, saying the Hitler diary has been found. That's where the T.M. Maharishi got his big break, as he was on the cover of Stern magazine. And so that's where that movie, that's where that movie Schindler's List comes from, with the main character played by the Indian exterminated Stern. But the reason it was done, I will tell you about employment. What sort of employment can homosexuals get? Ask yourself that question. What sort of employment can homosexuals get? Well, they can become politicians in the Labor Party. They can also do other work which involves killing people. So that's where I'll end. That's where I'll stop speaking. Okay, I like The Who, that UK band, The Who, and their song Baba O'Reilly, because Meher Baba visited Australia in 1958 or something, and his believers, followers, had purchased some land, turned it into a trust. A truss, a truss is something that men wear if they've got a certain type of physical, biological problem. And The Who, working for some local rock show promoter, then did a song, Baba O'Reilly, while the name O'Reilly was to do with, I think it was some major criminal or politician or IRA. Or, The Who, of course, was the World Health Organization. And so when I was in a typical Australian mood, I did write to them, not just a one-page sort of letter, saying, well, here's a plan, here's a plan for you. Forget about organised crime for a while and, world governments and the mafia and the Vatican and everything else. But the reason the thing is, although the Pope was no longer Italian, everybody who was working behind the scenes was an Italian. You understand that? So what I did was write to the UN about something, with an idea, well, not really an idea, but I suppose an idea, something to write about. What you want is one single year of peace, starting with the UN. Because up till then, the only thing that they were doing was, I won't say promoting it, but they were set up to sort of promote the idea of the Labor Party, and the Labor Party had no government except in times of war, and so wars kept coming. Australia, no government except when wars are going on, usually overseas or against the local population. And so the UN, I guess, thought, well, okay, let's do it. Let's have a year of peace. Never been done before, won't be done again. And it worked. You know what I'm saying? Okay, bye now. Thank God. I think the year was, I wrote that 1982. I think the year of peace was 1984 or 85. And then, of course, as I said, the paparazzi, Rupert Murdoch and company, then, did all this and did all that and took all that, and then spent the next 50, 60, 70 years promoting, murder for hire, even with the space shuttle, Okay, well, there's a bit more. I ordered a book the other day that I'd done, and somebody has edited the cover on Amazon Books, and somebody's edited the cover. Oh my God! And it's the cover now. It doesn't have the same thing I put on it. And it was about a political party here, an offshoot of the Labor Party, formed and started specifically by what they said were homosexuals who would use the contents of your stomach, of the fridge, as the name of their leader. And the leader would change his name by deed poll. And the party was called the Happy Birthday Party. And who did it eventually turn out to be? Church of Scientology, which had been legalized. And the Church of Scientology, once legalized, thought, the selling of heroin has now been legalized. So let's sell some heroin. And that means if the Church of Scientology is legalized, murder also has been legalized. Okay, you understand, I'm sure you understand that. In France, to test the theory out, recently, a letter to Scientology, just detailing a few things. Their answer was, we'll shoot a black man, defenseless, living in a local ghetto. And then it carried forward, where in California somebody shoots Donald Trump, and they're an excellent shot. Absolutely excellent shot. They could have blown his brains out, but they wanted to shoot him in the right ear because they had already assumed the teachings of Self-Realization Fellowship, saying, listen in the right ear. And so what you have is a world, it's not gone to pot, it's gone a lot worse than that. Oh, you know what I mean, do you? So that was that. He got shot in the ear via France. I visited France, but I won't say what. The mafia, they got contacts everywhere. Everywhere. Everybody who's ever used junk is a contact that can be employed by them. Okay, so I'm sorry to hear Tim Leary died. He was saying I had the most interesting life experience you could imagine. Oh man! And they showed him drinking some beer, but that took place when the Italian mafia moved in next door, number 37. Tim Leary's wife, within a week, moving to Italy, was murdered by Italian mafia. I've seen them do it here. They did it to, and then I won't even go into the details. Just say that they did a killing or an attempted murder on Professor Horn's daughter. When I moved in here, when the mafia, came full face on. Went to where she used to live when they targeted her for murder to kill her. Went to the place where she lived. Italian mafia had taken over the whole place. Changed the name of the local park. Then changed the name back again. And so on. That's Italian mafia. So congratulations. And the big news story is that Jeff Lynne of the Electric Light Orchestra isn't going to do any more concerts because his identity, how to explain it? What they did, just to find out exactly who's involved in this, the people who killed Kennedy, I moved into a place built by the people who killed President Kennedy. They developed the idea of tape cassettes and the speed at which the tape goes over the playback head from the people's business names who killed Kennedy, the president of USA. So with the ELO, I didn't buy an LP record. I bought a tape cassette. That meant that the people who killed Kennedy here locally from Adelaide would then assume the identity of ELO man Jeff Lynne. And so they came on saying, I'm Jeff and she's Lynne. And what were they doing? Heroin. Importing heroin. Heroin dealers. Big time heroin dealers. So the final thought was last night I fell asleep pondering this question. Now, why would cocaine, kilo of cocaine, 2 kilos of cocaine, why would cocaine be shipped from Britain? I mean, it comes from Mexico or South America. Why would it be shipped from Britain? It's got nothing to do with quantity or quality or do you want to use this drug? Nothing at all. Why was it shipped from Britain? Answer, ban the Labour Party. Ban them. As for the Hare Krishnas, they're white supremacists. I got nothing to do with them. Never had. Neither did my friend the astrologer, who was in prison 3 times with Mahatma Gandhi 3 times pre-World War II. Okay. And by the way, they killed him as well. 1983, he knew that they were going to kill him. Wrote me a letter about it, sort of. Oh, God. Some people are good, or they're not afraid to live. Other people are just evil. You know, they can't think of anything that supports life apart from prison sentences. So my conclusion is ban the Labor Party. And as I know, that won't happen. Yeah, okay, rightio. Meher Baba. Right, well, that was once off, once only. It'll never happen again. Cheerio, and goodbye.